The conference room aboard the Galactic Unity station hummed with the usual diplomatic chatter. Ambassador Park Dae-hoon sat quietly at the human delegation table, his hands folded on the polished surface. He had been doing this job for 12 years now, and he knew how these meetings went. Everyone talked. Everyone complained. Nobody did anything. Today felt different. The Vraxian delegation entered through the main doors and the room went silent. They were massive creatures, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick armor-plated skin and eyes that gleamed like polished obsidian. Their commander, a warrior named Kresh, strode to the center of the chamber without waiting for permission to speak. Earth will surrender its outer colonies, Kresh announced, his voice booming through the translator device attached to his chest. You will pay tribute to the Vraxian hegemony. You have 48 hours to comply. Dae-hoon felt every eye in the room turn toward him. The other ambassadors watched with mixture of curiosity and pity. The Vraxians controlled 200 star systems. Their military was feared across known space. Earth had been part of the galactic community for only 150 years. In cosmic terms, humanity was still the new species on the block. Dae-hoon stood slowly. He was not a tall man, and next to Kresh he looked almost fragile. But his voice was steady when he spoke. No. Just that one word. Simple. Final. Kresh's eyes narrowed. You refuse? We do. The Vraxian commander laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Then you will learn what happens to those who defy us. The meeting ended badly. Dae-hoon returned to his quarters and sent an encrypted message to Earth. He knew what was coming. Everyone knew. The question was not if the Vraxians would attack, but when and where. The answer came 3 days later. New Perth was an agricultural colony in the Outer Rim, home to 3 million people. Families, farmers, teachers, children. The Vraxian fleet appeared in orbit without warning. The bombardment lasted 57 minutes. When it ended, there was nothing left but ash and molten glass. Dae-hoon watched the reports in his quarters aboard the station. The images were difficult to see. Entire cities simply gone. Orbital scans showed no life signs. 3 million people murdered to make a point. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. The ambassadors expressed their shock and sadness. They offered thoughts and prayers. But when it came time to vote on action against the Vraxians, the chamber fell silent. No one wanted to risk war with such a powerful empire. Not for Earth. Not for 3 million dead humans. Dae-hoon sat through the entire session without speaking. When it ended, he walked back to his quarters alone. 3 weeks passed. The Vraxians issued new demands. The colonies closer to Earth were told to prepare for Vraxian governors. Resistance would be met with force. The message was clear. This was just the beginning. Then came the hospital ship. The Mercy's Hope was a medical vessel, clearly marked with the universal symbols for non-combatant aid ships. It was evacuating children from a colony near Vraxian space, trying to get them to safety before the Vraxians arrived. The ship carried no weapons. Its shields were designed for radiation, not combat. The Vraxian interceptor wing found it in open space. The attack was brief. The emergency transmission lasted only 18 seconds before the ship's systems failed. In those 18 seconds, the galaxy heard children screaming. In Seoul, deep beneath the city in the emergency command center, Fleet Admiral Kang Min-seo listened to the recording. Her face was like carved stone. Her daughter had been on that ship, helping with the evacuation as a medical volunteer. Had been. Past tense now. Around her, the command staff waited in silence. They all knew what came next. They had been preparing for this moment for over a century, hoping it would never come. But now the time had arrived. Send the message, Min-seo said quietly. Defense Minister Lee Haiwan hesitated. Admiral, if we do this, there is no going back. The galaxy will see who we really are. They killed our children, Min-seo replied, her voice soft but filled with something cold and ancient. They need to learn what happens when Earth gets angry. Send the message. The transmission went out on all frequencies. Park Dae-hoon's face appeared on screens across known space. His message was brief. You have 48 hours to withdraw from all human territories and surrender your command structure for trial. This is your only warning. The Vraxian Emperor watched the broadcast from his throne world. He laughed. His commanders laughed. They shared the message across their networks, mocking the audacity of these weak humans. They broadcast it as entertainment, a joke to share among warriors. That was the last time anyone heard Vraxian laughter. The countdown reached 0 at exactly midnight, Earth Standard Time. 48 hours and 17 minutes had passed since humanity issued its warning. The Vraxians had not withdrawn. They had not surrendered. They had sent more warships toward human colonies instead. Deep space monitoring stations across the galaxy detected something strange at that exact moment. Power signatures were appearing on sensors, thousands of them, emerging from empty space where nothing should exist. The readings made no sense at first. Then the analysts understood, and cold fear spread through every military command center that saw the data. Humanity had hidden an entire fleet in the dark spaces between stars. Commander Vector stood on the bridge of his Vraxian battlecruiser, studying the sensor display with growing confusion. The screens showed ships appearing all around his position. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands. Massive vessels, some stretching 10 kilometers from bow to stern. Dreadnoughts. Carriers. Destroyers. Strike craft by the tens of thousands. "This is impossible," Vector whispered. "Where did they come from?" His tactical officer's voice shook. "Sir, they have been out there the whole time. Hidden. Waiting." For 150 years, humanity had been building this fleet in secret. While they smiled and traded and attended diplomatic functions, they had been preparing for the day someone crossed the line that should never be crossed. Aboard the human dreadnought Consequences, Admiral Kong Mincio stood at the command console. The bridge around her was quiet except for the soft beeping of instruments. Her crew knew what they were about to do. They had trained for this in simulations millions of times. But simulations did not have the weight of 3 million dead civilians behind them. On Mincio's console sat a photograph. 30 smiling children in a kindergarten class. Her daughter Jaiwu was third from the left, wearing a bright yellow dress. Only 3 of those children had survived the hospital ship attack. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her executive officer said quietly. Mincio nodded. "Open a channel to all Vraxian frequencies." The communications officer's fingers moved over his controls. "Channel open, ma'am." "Play the recording." Every Vraxian ship within 100 light-years received the transmission. Not words. Not threats. Just sound. The screams from the hospital ship played for 30 seconds. Children crying for their parents. Medical staff shouting desperately. Then the explosion. Then silence. 10 seconds of empty silence. Then the human fleet opened fire. Captain Choi Subin commanded the destroyer Relentless. His target was a Vraxian command carrier, a massive ship that coordinated an entire battle group. Around him, his crew worked with smooth precision. Their movements looked almost like a dance, each person knowing exactly what to do and when. The weapons systems came alive. Kinetic cannons fired tungsten rods the size of telephone poles, accelerated to incredible speeds. Each rod hit with the force of a nuclear weapon, but without the radiation. Fusion lances cut through Vraxian shields like hot knives through butter. Strike craft poured from human carriers in coordinated swarms, moving with artificial intelligence that predicted enemy movements before they happened. The Vraxians had never seen anything like it. Their weapons were powerful but crude. Their tactics relied on overwhelming force and intimidation. They expected their enemies to break and run. Humans did not run. Commander Nam Jisoo sat in the weapons control center of her cruiser, her hands steady on the controls. She had lost her brother at New Perth. His wife. Their 2 sons. The Vraxians had taken her entire family. Now she activated the weapon humanity had kept most secret. The gravity disruptor. Her target was a Vraxian battlecruiser, one of the ships that had attacked the hospital vessel. The weapon fired, though there was no beam to see, no projectile to track. Space itself changed around the enemy ship. Gravity twisted and compressed. The massive battlecruiser simply collapsed inward, crushed by impossible forces, reduced to a dense sphere of metal and organic matter only 6 meters across. Took 3 seconds. The crew of 800 Vraxians died instantly, never knowing what happened. It was cleaner than they deserved. More merciful than what they had given to human children. Across the battlefield, more gravity weapons fired. More Vraxian ships collapsed into themselves. Others exploded under kinetic bombardment. Strike craft tore through formations with surgical precision. The human AI systems hacked Vraxian communications, broadcasting false orders, creating chaos and confusion. The Vraxian home fleet had numbered 3,000 ships when the battle began. They were the pride of an empire that had conquered 200 star systems. Their commanders were veterans of 100 campaigns. 47 minutes after the first shot was fired, only 153 Vraxian ships remained operational. The survivors fled in every direction, abandoning formation, abandoning discipline, just trying to escape. The humans pursued them. On the Consequences, Mincio watched the tactical display as the enemy scattered. Around her, the bridge crew remained silent. There was no celebration. No cheering. This was not a victory to celebrate. This was a lesson that had to be taught. All ships begin pursuit operations, Mincio ordered. We are not after territory. We are not after resources. We want names. Every commander who participated in attacks on human civilians will be found and brought to trial. Her executive officer nodded. Sending orders now, Admiral. Mincio looked at the photograph of her daughter's class one more time. They laughed at our warning, she said softly. Now they will learn what happens when you make Earth angry. The human fleet moved forward into Vraxian space like a tide of cold, methodical justice. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The peaceful humans, the friendly traders, the patient diplomats had revealed their true nature. They were hunters. And they had just begun the hunt. For 36 days, human warships moved through Vraxian space like ghosts. They did not occupy planets. They did not claim territory. They were searching for specific people, and they had all the time in the world to find them. Colonel Park Min-jae led his marine unit through the corridors of a Vraxian command station. Their powered armor made them faster and stronger than any Vraxian warrior, but they moved carefully, checking every corner. This was not a raid to kill. This was an arrest operation. Target located, his tactical officer reported through the comm system. General Throckvan, 3rd level, command suite. He ordered the bombardment of New Perth. Min-jae nodded inside his helmet. Remember, we take him alive. He goes to trial. They found the Vraxian general trying to destroy computer files. He fought when they entered, reaching for a weapon, but the Marines were too fast. Within seconds, Throckvan was restrained and being led to a transport ship. He would face justice for what he had done. This scene repeated across dozens of worlds. Every Vraxian officer who had participated in attacks on human civilians was identified, located, and captured. The galaxy watched in amazement. Humanity was not acting like conquerors. They were acting like police officers making arrests. The secret was simple but shocking. For decades, humanity had been monitoring galactic communications. They had recordings of every order, every decision, every conversation. When the Vraxian commanders had laughed about killing humans, those laughs had been recorded. When they had celebrated the destruction of New Perth, humanity had heard every word. Now those recordings would be used as evidence. Defense Minister Lee Haiwan stood in the grand courtroom that humanity had constructed on a neutral station. The first trial was about to begin. Cameras from every major news network in the galaxy were present. This would be broadcast live to billions of viewers. General Throckvan sat in the defendant's chair. He had legal representation, human lawyers who would ensure his rights were protected. Evidence was presented methodically. Audio recordings, video footage, testimony from survivors. Every fact was checked and verified. You ordered the bombardment of a civilian population, Haiwan said during the closing arguments. 3 million people died. Families, children, people who had never harmed anyone. Throckvan's lawyer argued that he was following orders, that this was an act of war, that soldiers should not be prosecuted for military actions. The judges listened carefully to every argument. Then Chief Justice Kim Soo-jin delivered the verdict. Following orders is not a defense for crimes against humanity. The evidence shows you deliberately targeted civilians. The verdict is guilty. The sentence is life imprisonment. No execution. No torture. Just imprisonment for the rest of his natural life. Some species found this more frightening than death. To live for decades, perhaps centuries, locked away with nothing but memories of what you had done. More trials followed. More verdicts. More life sentences. The galaxy watched humans demonstrate something terrifying. Perfect control. They were angry, yes. Furious even. But they channeled that fury through law and order. Every accused received a fair trial. Every sentence followed established rules. It was cold, systematic justice, and it scared other species more than any rampage would have. Meanwhile, Ambassador Park Dae-hoon stood before the Galactic Council one final time. The chamber was packed. Every species wanted to hear what humanity would say. We came to you as friends, Dae-hoon said quietly. For 150 years, we traded with you. We shared our culture. We compromised in negotiations. We followed your rules. We did this because we knew what we were capable of and we chose to be better. He paused, letting his words sink in. But when the Vraxians attacked our colonies, we asked for help. You gave us sympathy but no action. When they murdered our children, you told us to be patient. So we learned an important lesson. We cannot trust you to protect us. The chamber erupted in protests. Ambassadors shouted. Council members demanded order. Daehoon waited for silence, then continued. Earth withdraws from the Galactic Council. We are forming a new alliance with species who understand that strength must protect the weak, not prey upon them. Any species who wishes to join us is welcome. 12 species stood immediately. Small nations who had been bullied by larger powers for decades. Within an hour, they formally joined what would be called the Terran Alliance. Within a month, 30 more species requested membership. The balance of power in the galaxy shifted overnight. The old council, which had maintained order through inaction and compromise, suddenly found itself irrelevant. The new Terran Alliance had teeth. Attack one member and face the wrath of humanity and all its allies. Pirates learned this lesson quickly. A raider group attacked a small trading convoy from one of the Alliance's newest members. The human response was immediate. Within 6 hours, every pirate base within 50 light-years was destroyed or captured. Not a single pirate escaped. The message was clear. The Terran Alliance protected its members completely and without hesitation. Lieutenant Commander Bae Jiwon led the assault on the last Vraxian military holdout, a fortress moon that refused to surrender. Her orders were specific: disable all weapons, cause 0 civilian casualties. It seemed impossible, but her team accomplished it in 6 hours using precision strikes and electronic warfare. When the fortress commander finally surrendered, he asked Jiwon how they had won so easily. "We have been preparing for war since before your grandfather was born," she replied simply. "We hoped we would never need to use these skills. But when you forced us to fight, you faced 150 years of preparation. You never had a chance." The galaxy was learning a new rule. Humanity preferred peace, but they were extraordinarily good at war. And they never, ever forgot when someone hurt their children. Captain Yoon Ha-jin studied the sensor readouts carefully. His intelligence vessel had been tracking the Vraxian Emperor for 3 weeks, following a trail of encrypted communications and secret supply drops. The old ruler thought he had escaped. He thought he could hide in the Outer Rim territories where no one would look for him. He was wrong. "Found him," Ha-jin reported over the secure channel. "Small moon in the Turo system. Single shuttle, minimal security." Admiral Kang Minseo's voice came back immediately. "Capture him alive. I want him healthy. I want him to live a very long time." The extraction took less than an hour. The Emperor's guards surrendered without fighting when they saw the human marines. The old Vraxian ruler was found in a small dwelling, trying to look like an ordinary citizen. But his eyes gave him away. He knew exactly who he was and what he had done. They brought him back to face trial. The courtroom was even more crowded for the Emperor's trial than it had been for the generals. This was the leader who had authorized everything. The attacks on civilians. The destruction of the hospital ship. All of it had required his approval. His lawyers argued that he was a head of state, protected by diplomatic immunity. They said you could not prosecute a ruler for decisions made during wartime. They cited centuries of galactic precedent. Chief Justice Kim Soo-jin listened to every argument, then delivered her response. "Earth has experience with these excuses. Our history taught us painful lessons about what happens when leaders claim immunity for atrocities. We established courts specifically to handle such cases. Superior orders and sovereign immunity are not defenses for crimes against humanity." She looked directly at the Emperor. "You authorized attacks on civilian populations. You celebrated when human children died. The evidence is overwhelming. The verdict is guilty on all counts. The sentence is life imprisonment." The Emperor was 70 years old. His species typically lived to be 200. He would spend the next 130 years in a human prison facility, comfortable but isolated, watching reports of how his empire crumbled without him. Some said this was crueler than execution. The humans did not disagree. Across former Vraxian space, the remaining military forces faced a simple choice: surrender peacefully or be hunted down. Most chose surrender. They had seen what happened to those who continued fighting. But some did not learn the lesson. A Vraxian admiral named Kreth refused all terms. He gathered loyal ships around a fortress moon and declared he would fight to the last warrior. He sent broadcasts calling humanity cowards and monsters, daring them to attack his stronghold. Lieutenant Commander Bae Jiwon received the assignment. Her orders were clear but challenging: disable all military capability without harming any civilians living on the moon. There were families there, merchants, service workers. They were not soldiers. Jiwon studied the fortress defenses for 2 days, running simulations with her tactical team. Then she launched the operation. Human strike craft approached the moon from multiple directions, drawing fire from the defensive batteries. While the Vraxian gunners focused on the fighters, electronic warfare specialists hacked into the fortress computer systems. Within minutes, every weapon system went offline. Life support remained functional. Communication stayed active. But the guns simply stopped working. Kreth found himself commanding a fortress that could not fire a single shot. His ships could not launch. His soldiers could not even activate their personal weapons. Everything electronic had been compromised. The assault teams entered the fortress 6 hours after the operation began. They moved through corridors filled with confused, disarmed Vraxian warriors. Not a single shot was fired by either side. By the time they reached Kreth's command center, he was sitting at his desk in stunned silence. "How?" was all he asked. Jaiwan removed her helmet. "We have been studying warfare for our entire existence as a species. We fought each other for thousands of years before we reached the stars. We learned every possible way to win. When you forced us to fight, you faced all that accumulated knowledge. You never had a chance." The fortress moon surrendered without a single casualty. News of the bloodless victory spread quickly. The remaining Vraxian holdouts began surrendering in waves. They realized that continued resistance was not just futile but pointless. Humanity could defeat them without even killing them. What was the point of fighting? The Terran alliance grew stronger every day. Species who had lived under threat of aggression for centuries requested membership. They saw that humanity offered something the old Galactic Council never had: genuine protection backed by overwhelming force. Within 18 months, the alliance included 45 different species. The human fleet patrolled openly now, no longer hiding in dark space. Their ships moved through trade routes and border regions, their presence a guarantee of safety. Pirate attacks dropped to nearly zero. Raiders who had operated freely for decades suddenly found themselves hunted by forces they could not match. Most retired. The stubborn ones died or went to prison. A new order emerged in the galaxy. Not based on who was strongest or most aggressive, but on a simple principle. Those with power had a responsibility to protect those without it. And humanity enforced that principle with absolute certainty. Defense Minister Li Haiwan gave an interview to a major galactic news network. The reporter asked if humanity had always been this militarily capable. "Yes," Haiwan answered honestly. "We have always had these abilities. We chose not to use them. We chose diplomacy and friendship first. But when you massacre our children, you remove our choice. Then you face what we really are. And what we are is very, very good at warfare." The interview was watched by billions. The message was understood by everyone. Be friends with humanity and they would be loyal, generous, kind. But harm their families, and discover why Earth had produced the most dangerous predators in known space. The Vraxians had learned this lesson. The rest of the galaxy took notes. 3 years had passed since the fires consumed New Perth. Dr. Li Yunji stood before the memorial monument, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. The structure rose from the glass surface where the colony had once thrived, 3 stories of carved stone listing every name. All 3,197,847 people who had died in the Vraxian attack. Above the names, carved in letters 2 meters tall, were words that billions across the galaxy now knew by heart. We remember. We protect. We never forgive those who target the innocent. Yunji had lost her brother in the attack, along with his wife and their 2 young children. She came here every year on the anniversary. So did tens of thousands of others. The memorial had become a place of pilgrimage, a reminder of why the Terran Alliance existed. The galaxy had changed dramatically in 3 years. The Vraxian hegemony, once a mighty empire controlling 200 systems, was now confined to its home system. Human monitoring stations watched their every move. Their military was reduced to basic defense forces. Their emperor had died the previous year in prison, having watched everything he built fall apart. The Terran Alliance now included 45 species. More requested membership every month. The reason was simple: Alliance members were protected. Completely. Without hesitation. Attack one and face the combined might of all the others, with humanity leading the response. Trade flourished under Alliance protection. Scientific cooperation reached levels never seen before. Cultural exchanges brought species together in new ways. But underneath all this cooperation was an unspoken understanding. The peace existed because everyone knew what would happen if it was broken. Admiral Kang Mincio, now retired from active duty, taught at the Galactic Military Academy. Her classes were always full. Officers from dozens of species came to learn from the woman who had commanded Earth's fleet during the war. Today she stood before a lecture hall filled with young cadets. On the screen behind her was an image of Earth, blue and beautiful, floating in the darkness of space. Many of you have heard that humans are peaceful, she began. This is true. But you must understand what that means. We choose peace every single day. We choose civilization over violence. We choose cooperation over conquest. But these are choices, not limitations. She paused, letting her words settle. When the Vraxians attacked our colonies, they thought they were dealing with a weak species. They saw our kindness and mistook it for weakness. They did not understand that we had been kind because we knew what we were capable of. A young alien officer raised a tentacle nervously. Admiral, may I ask a question? Of course. Will humanity ever forgive the Vraxians for what they did? Mincio was quiet for a moment. On her desk sat a photograph, one she carried everywhere. 30 children in a kindergarten class. Her daughter Jaiwu, third from the left, wearing a bright yellow dress. Only 3 of those children had survived the hospital ship attack. Ask me again in 1,000 years, she said finally. Perhaps the answer will be different by then. She looked at the photograph, then back at her students. But probably not. Earth remembers everything. We remember kindness and we return it with loyalty and friendship. But we also remember cruelty. We remember when someone makes our children cry. And we never, ever forget. The lecture hall was completely silent. That evening, in her small apartment overlooking the academy grounds, Mincio sat by the window with a cup of tea. Below, cadets from dozens of worlds trained together. Former enemies worked side by side. Species that had been at war for generations now studied together, ate together, became friends. This was what Jaiwa's generation had died for. A galaxy where strength protected instead of preyed. Where justice followed action. Where consequences were certain and swift. Her communication device chimed softly. A message from Captain Yoon Ha-jin, still commanding his intelligence vessel on the frontier. Pirate group attempted raid on Alliance convoy today. They fled when they identified our escort as human. No shots fired. They are learning. Mincio smiled slightly. Yes, they were learning. The galaxy had discovered that humanity made excellent friends but terrible enemies. Most species chose friendship. They traded with human worlds, studied human culture, sent their children to human universities. The Alliance thrived because cooperation benefited everyone. But in the dark spaces between stars, human warships still patrolled. The fleet that had been hidden for 150 years now moved openly, a constant reminder. The weapons that had crushed the Vraxian hegemony in 47 minutes remained ready, maintained and upgraded constantly. Peace existed not because everyone was kind, but because everyone understood the consequences of cruelty. Ambassador Park Dae-hoon, now serving as the Alliance's diplomatic chief, often met with representatives from species considering membership. They always asked the same question, what does the Alliance require from us? His answer never changed. Treat others with respect. Protect those weaker than yourself. Never target civilians. Follow these simple rules, and you will find humanity to be the most loyal ally you could imagine. Break these rules and discover why Earth spent 150 years preparing for war. Most species joined eagerly. A few declined, preferring independence. Humanity respected that choice. The Alliance was not an empire. Members joined willingly or not at all. But the warning was clear to everyone. The peaceful humans, the friendly traders, the patient diplomats were all real. But underneath that peaceful exterior was something ancient and dangerous. 4 billion years of evolution had created a species that survived everything their violent planet threw at them. Ice ages. Plagues. Predators. Disasters. They had climbed to the top of their food chain by being the most persistent, most adaptable, most relentless hunters their world had ever produced. The Vraxians had made them angry. The galaxy had watched what happened. Now everyone knew. You could be humanity's friend and they would die to protect you. Or you could be their enemy and learn what it meant when Earth stopped being kind. Most chose friendship. The wise ones anyway.